All right, let's get to the C tier. A lot of teams here. We have 6 in the C tier. Chicago Bears lead it off. They have depth. I will give them. They get in the C tier because they go probably 6 or so deep with quality players. They just don't have a dude at this point in time. Gervon, he could get there, right? We've seen Montez Sweat be that guy in years past. Absolutely was not last year. Their linebackers are solid, not spectacular. So there's no impact guy in this unit. It is, I think, the biggest thing missing that can get them to the next level, to the B tier, to the A tier, where pretty much all those teams have a dude in their units. Bears right now are just solid. Now, you can win games like that, but again, I don't think anyone's going into a Chicago Bears team and being like, oh man, we got to prepare for this defensive line at this point. Indianapolis Colts make this tier as well. Probably the one team that I think could push higher just because they have a lot of young guys I like, but just at this point in time, not ready to put them there. They've invested a lot in this edge group. Kwity Paye, a former first rounder. Latu, a first rounder a year ago. Samson Ebukam, JT Tuimoloau, second rounder this year. Has potential. We'll see if they get results. Obviously, their interior is great with Grover Stewart, Forrest Buckner, average linebackers, and Jalen Carleys and Zaire Franklin. New Orleans Saints I put in this tier with Chase Young, Carl Granderson, Cam Jordan off the edge. I'm hoping Brian Brzee takes a big step. I liked him coming out of Clemson. I knew he was a little bit raw, a little bit of a project. He has flashed through 2 seasons, never quite put it all together. If he takes the next step, this could be a B-tier unit for sure. Pete Werner, Demario Davis, your linebackers. Demario Davis, dude, is going to be 36 years old this season. What a marvel he has been over the course of his career. Still, dude, right? Still getting it done at that age. San Francisco 49ers make this tier. They were probably a D-tier unit a season ago, even with Nick Bosa and Fred Warner, 2 stars in this unit, but then a lot of question marks after that. Pretty much all question marks after that. Michael Williams, Bryce Huff, your edge rushers, Jordan Elliott, Alfred Collins, CJ West, Evan Anderson, your DTs, and then D. Winters, Nick Martin, your other linebackers. Can you point to a single one of those guys and be like, I know he's going to be good this year? You just can't, unfortunately. That's the nature of this 49ers team, and that's why they put them in the C tier here. New England Patriots I put in this tier. Probably a far cry from where they were a year ago, one of the worst run defenses in the NFL. But
here comes the cavalry.
Christian Barmore back. Milton Williams signed this offseason. Robert Spillane signed this offseason.
Huge.
And then Keon White going into year 3 off the edge. I think this will be a much improved unit this year. And last but not least, the Kansas City Chiefs make this C tier. Another team with some stars. Obviously, we know George Karlaftis. We know Chris Jones. Chris Jones, he's 31, but he's ageless. He's still at the top of his game from what we've seen from him. Your linebacker unit, one of the best linebacker units in the NFL with 3 different skill sets, Nick Bolton, Drew Tranquil, Leo Chanel. But outside of Chris Jones, George Karlaftis, who else is making an impact on this defensive line? You lost Turk Wharton. Is Mike Dana going to be that guy? Is Felix Anudike-Uzomah finally going to show up? Is Charles Omenihu going to be an impact player? Mike Pennell, Jerry Tillery, Omar Norman-Lott, your second rounder? I don't know. And because of that, they're a C-tier unit.
This just feels like a classic Spags put it together and make it work type defense.
Yeah.
Chris Jones
they're going to get results.
Chaos. Look, Mike Dana makes plays in the playoffs. Mike Dana is the one guy that doesn't get accounted for in the scheming meeting, and he somehow ends up with a 101 or unblocked on a loop, a stunt, something. I'll talk about the Bears first. They need way more from Sweat. You touched on it. They got a lot from Dexter, and I feel like if Sweat and Dexter can have some synchronicity there with both of them winning, it could be chaotic in some certain backfields. Billings, when healthy, and I know he had a big injury last year, when healthy, Billings is a killer, and he's an underappreciated big in the National Football League. I think that the 2 linebackers with Edwards and Edmonds can be must-see TV. Edwards is all over the field. He was one of my favorite signings recently with Chicago, and watching him make all those plays last year, a lot of fun. I would say the Bears have the ability, if Montez Sweat can play up to what he's being paid, to jump into, at the very least, the B tier. And I know we're only talking about front 7, but you got to keep in mind they've got a good back end. They've got a new coordinator who's, people would say he's equally as good as the previous one who did a good job. things could be looking up for Chicago.
I think about Chicago is of all these teams in the C tier, I think their floor is the C tier. They can survive injuries at positions. Like they have the best depth of any of these units, in my opinion.
And Deo Dengbo is for his Buckner size. That's why we signed him. We wanted a big physical mismatch. Well, you got one. If you can show up and just put some things together, it could be a lot of fun to watch this group.
All right, let's get to the B tier here. Loaded B tier. And I think every B tier fan base is going to come at me and say we're A tier. And this is where it got tough for me, because for the A tier, I was really looking for, truly like getting elite players. To make the A tier, I wanted a team that either had incredible depth or some elite players that change the game so much that they have to be accounted for. If you didn't quite have that, you made the B tier. But you can make arguments that any of these units, pretty much all these that I'm going to talk about, could make the A tier. And I'd probably nod along. I'd probably be like, yeah, there's a lot of talent here, but we just need to see it. And they are, the teams. The Baltimore Ravens, to start off, very deep defensive line. Kyle Van Noy, Odafe Owe, Mike Green, your second rounder, David Ajabo, former second rounder on the edge, Travis Jones, Nnamdi Madubuike, one of the better interiors in the NFL at DT, and then Roquan Smith, Trenton Simpson. Like, there is a lot to like here. I just think it's a B tier unit. Borderline A tier, but B tier unit.
They're going to hate you in Baltimore.
They are. Buffalo Bills in this one as well. Greg Rousseau, Joey Bosa now, Michael Hoyt, AJ Epinesa off the edge, Ed Oliver, Daquan Jones, Larry Ogunjobi, your second rounder, TJ Sanders on the interior. Then your linebacker core of Matt Milano, Terrell Bernard, Dorian Williams. I love what they did this offseason, rebuilding it for kind of cheap. Of all these teams, though, I think this was the most borderline. I just don't know what I'm going to get from Joey Bosa. Joey Bosa is healthy. Joey Bosa is the one we know and love. This is a solid B tier team to possibly A tier, but this one needs to prove it. Cowboys in this tier as well. Micah Parsons, Osa Odighizuwa, obviously your headliners. But after that, I'm really worried about this linebacking core. Obviously, DeMarvion Overshown, unlikely to play after that gruesome injury he had towards the end of last season. So Kenneth Murray, Maris Leafau, Jack Sanborn, what are those guys going to look like? Now, they have some depth on the edge, some young guys that could, across this defensive line, whether it's Mozzie Smith, your former first rounder on the interior, whether it's Sam Williams, whether it's Marshawn Nealon, Donovan Ezeraku. They've invested a lot. It's just, where will they be this upcoming season? Remains to be seen. But I put them in the B tier. Like I said, I'm going to make a lot of people mad with this B tier. Green Bay Packers are in the B tier as well. All the former first rounders. 5 former first rounders in this front seven. Rashawn Gary, Lucas Van Ness, Kenny Clark, Devontae Wyatt, Quay Walker. Alongside Carl Brooks, Kobe Wooden, Edgerrin Cooper, Kingsley Enagbare. It's like they are solid across the board. But Rashawn Gary is not a high-end impact guy. Kenny Clark's no longer a high-end impact guy. They are just like solid across the board. Edgerrin Cooper might be your saving grace because he looked like down the stretch last year a true dude, especially as a pass rusher, especially in the running game. Jacksonville Jaguars I put in this tier. Trayvon Walker, Josh Hines-Allen off the edge. I worry about their interior a little bit. Devon Hamilton, Mason Smith, Eric Armstead. But then one of the better linebacking cores in the NFL with Devin Lloyd, Foye Oluokun. Seattle Seahawks in this tier as well. One of the deepest defensive lines in the NFL. Just Derek Hall, Chiney Nwosu, Boye Mafe, DeMarcus Lawrence, Leonard Williams, Byron Murphy, Jerron Reed. Whew. I mean, like their second string is still a very capable unit, but another team where it's like, who's the one guy who's a game changer? Could Byron Murphy be that? I thought he was going to be that coming out of Texas.
He's a beast.
We'll see. Ernest Jones, Tyrese Knight, your linebacking core, but still just feels like a little bit of a B tier unit. Tampa Bay Bucks in this tier as well. Another team that just sends out a ton of guys, but I do worry about this linebacking core at this point. Levante David, Servassier Dennis. David at this point, not a great run defender, just really limited. So, Tampa Bay Bucks, and then your last team in this tier, it's the Houston Texans. Obviously, everyone knows Daniel Hunter, Will Anderson. It's just after that, you got nothing else to write home about. There is not another impact player in this front seven. Those guys do a lot of heavy lifting, and that got them to this tier. But if they had anyone else, this would be an A tier unit for me. But they end up in the B tier. So a lot to chew on there. And like I said, I think I'm going to make a lot of those fan bases mad. But all of them, for one reason or another, just fall short of we'll see when we get to the A tier.
Okay, there's two groups that I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about the Bills, and I'm going to talk about the Texans. And I'm going to talk about the Bills because of this. Okay, Michael Hoyt and Larry Ogunjobi, both of those guys got in trouble for PEDs.
Juicing.
They're going to miss 6 games, which means they're going to be fresh. I don't know if
they've ever come back and play the best football of their lives.
That's I don't know if you've ever seen Matt Milano before, and I would never accuse somebody of being on PEDs, but my God, he has natural PEDs. The Lord gave him natural PEDs. That's just, and he plays the game of football that way. Ed Oliver is kind of built the same way. He's just like a little strongman competition type. This defense is going to bow up on a lot of people, and I think that they are going to play their way into the A tier. The other group I think could play their way into the A tier is the Houston Texans. They have 2 fire-breathing dragons rushing the passer off the edge. That alone is enough to, invoke fear into the away team's hotels on Saturday night. That's just the way that it goes. And that ain't all they got. They got guys up the middle as well. Obviously Azeez Al-Shaair is a guy that strikes fear into the hearts of a lot of offensive players as well. We saw what happened to Trevor Lawrence. I don't expect him to change the way that he plays. I don't expect D'Amico Ryans to tell these guys to change the way that they play. The Houston Texans is one of these units, like the Ravens. Historically, they've struck fear into the hearts of their opponents. And I think that this Houston Texans team can, and it's all predicated on their ability to get after the quarterback off the edges.
Yeah, the Texans were a very difficult team for me to rank because I don't think there's an edge duo in the NFL, just at least for this season, you'd rather have, right? I think it is probably the best in the league. But how much does that – and it matters a lot, right? I've said before that if you have 2 offensive tackles, you have a good offensive line. If you have 2 elite offensive tackles, you have a good offensive line. If you have 2 elite pass rushers, you have a great defensive line. Like it really doesn't matter. You could throw backups at the defensive tackle position. It'll be a tough unit to stop just by the nature of how, rushing the passer works. But they basically have backups. They have guys who were for other teams, guys like Tim Settle, guys like Sheldon Rankins now at this point in his career, Fola Futakasi, that they're backups, unfortunately. So we'll see. It was
good back end. I know this isn't a back end discussion.
I'll just say there is no shame in being in the B tier because as we'll see when we get to the A tier, there are some loaded defensive lines